So the Congress gave him that in return for more money, and they passed No Child Left Behind. And they said, well, we're going to have accountability. How do you have it? We'll have tests. And then they said, but don't forget that the states have responsibility for education. So here's how No Child Left Behind works. It says to this teacher, and every teacher, every principal, you have to test all your kids every year for 5 years. And we're going to give you federal money based on how your kids do on that test. Ensuring that you must teach the test, right? That's good. And then the same law winks at you and says, but don't worry about it too much because you can pick the test and the passing score. Now consider what that means. What do you want for the kids of South Carolina? You want them to be educated to meet international standards of excellence, right? So they can compete in a global economy. And if they're not there now, what you want is you would pick, if you were going to do it through a test, you'd pick a hard test with a high score, and you'd say, we don't care if it takes us 10 years to get there. We just want to know we're gaining on it every year. We're doing better, right? Isn't that what you would do? And if you did that under No Child Left Behind, your reward would be having your money taken away from you. But if you pick an easy test with a low score, they'll write you a check every year. And at the end of it, you might even be lowering the quality of education that you're giving your kids. Am I fairly describing this?
Pretty much so.
I mean, it's a disaster for these teachers. They have to teach the test. And so South Carolina now has high state standards, which offsets that to some extent. But it's just wrong. And what Hillary thinks should be done is to scrap that system, to deal with, look at what the international standards say. What they say? International standards say we do quite well at the 4th grade level. There's a little gap between our performance and most rich countries at the 8th grade level, and it's pretty substantial at the 11th grade. And we know what happens. Basically, in these other countries, they have much more uniform standards, systems of education nationwide. They're more coherent. And the kids go to school longer, and they pay the teachers more, particularly in the high-skilled subjects. And so it's a different kettle of fish. We also make up a lot of the gap because we send a higher percentage of our young people to college. That's another reason we need to make access to college more universal, make it affordable for people. But she first wants to spend a significant amount of money helping the schools deal with the fact that 2 million teachers are about to retire. To recruit, train,
34 years. And
yeah, so you've been there a good while. So the next few years, 2 million teachers are going to leave the workforce, some of our best teachers. So she wants to help the schools recruit, train, and place teachers in the shortage subjects and the shortage areas. Most of the shortage subjects are science, math, technology, and languages. Most of the shortage areas are in rural areas and inner cities. And she believes if the federal government would pay more of those costs, then it would free up more of the existing school budget to maintain the programs that most state schools want to maintain, to keep not have to cut back on the music program or the arts programs or the other programs in the schools, to give a complete education to our kids, and that it would really help. The second thing she believes we should do is to substitute the measurements of No Child Left Behind for the way any other large organization would deal with the performance challenge. And think about this. If the United States Army, which is generally recognized as the best army in the world, let's say they had 4 brigades, and 3 of them met every performance standard, and the 4th brigade, nobody could hit the broadside of a barn with a rifle. Okay? What would they do? Would they give them all a test for 5 years? Now think about it. What would they do? What do they? This is very important. They would find out what the first 3 brigades are doing right, and they would invest in putting those practices into the 4th brigade, knowing that there was no difference in the intelligence of the members of the men and women in the 4th brigade from the other 3. If you had a major retailer that performed excellently in 30 stores and 20 stores were failing, what would they do? Give everybody in the store, the 20 stores, a test for 5 years? No. They would find out what were the elements of excellence that were replicated in the 30 stores that were doing well, and they would make sure that eventually that happened in the other 20 stores so they could stay in business. I've never met a teacher or a principal that didn't want to do a good job. These people, when you go into this work, you know you're never going to be rich, so you go into it because you care about the kids. Right? I mean, think about the mindset of this. This was a good law with a well-intentioned law that was poorly written by people who didn't understand how classrooms work and education work. They really did not mean to mess it up. They had the best of intentions. But it showed the proof of what, you know what old Mark Twain said about this? He said, there's only two things no human being should ever have to watch being made, sausage and laws. and No Child Left Behind is a classic example of that. So what Hillay thinks would work better is, go out and find the 20 elementary schools, 20 middle schools, and 20 high schools in America that are racially and income-wise generally representative in their student bodies, that are performing at a very high level. Identify the common characteristics of that, and go to the schools and work with the teachers and the principals and pay to help develop those performance indicators in every school in the country. It's not like people would resist this. I think there would be an enormous, based on the teachers I've talked to all over America, and Hillary does this everywhere she goes. She tries to take some time to talk to the teachers and listen. We think there would be an enormous set of relief if we were scrapping the system of No Child Left Behind and involving the teachers and the principals in achieving uniform standards of excellence. And since you already have high standards, it would basically be just taking the schools, like you think in South Carolina,